Um, all right, this is the Fight Chatter Podcast, episode 7, being recorded on August 16th. And I'm Charles Presnell. I'm with Doug Gibson from Fight Game, Utah Fight Game, and also Plan 9 Crunch podcast and blog. How you doing, Doug?
Thanks for having me, Charles. This is exciting.
All right, so we're going to jump right into it. I want to talk a little bit about the All Heart card coming up next week. But first, let's talk about Hava's fight tonight at the Maverick Center. You know a lot more about that than I do.
It's
So.
Hava Nathan Owens. I don't know if he lives in Ogden now, but he used to train at Foley's Gym. And he's on a pretty good roll. You and I saw him about almost 18 months ago in, what was that? Washington Terrace card?
Washington Terrace, yeah.
Where he was very impressive. He was once a boxer, but he started doing MMA seriously. He started his career 1-3, and they were tough fights. Had some tough opponents. He lately though has won, I think, 3 of his last 4. He's 4-4 now, and one of those was a win over Cecily Collard, who is Clay Collard's brother and a pretty good local regional fighter himself. So it'll be fun to see if Hava continues his success tonight.
Now, the fight we watched, Hava fought a fighter that...
Let me see if I can find the guy on here really quick.
Yeah, the guy he fought, I remember him just by looking it up, had fought on the Idaho card that Mauro Gutierrez fought on, and he fought the...
Yeah, here it is. Well, let me just give you the guy he fought. I have it right here.
Okay.
He beat Steven Steyerwalt by unanimous decision.
Correct. And Steyerwalt defeated Nathan, I can't remember his last name.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I'm a fan of his. He's having a rough stretch right now, unfortunately, in the game. I need to talk louder. I know that, okay? And so his last fight, he stopped on Tapology, and you have to... Thomas Prestridge.
Correct. And he's a local fighter. He had Sean Cross in his corner that night. And so that's the great thing I like about MMA compared to boxing is you could start out like Hava did, and you can look at their record and be like, hey, you know what, this guy's not really that good. But then he could go back, learn some new skills, practice his jiu-jitsu, practice his striking, and there's enough smaller promotions around that he can bounce back and get on a roll. And now he's fighting at the Maverick Center on the big card for Fierce Fighting, where he was fighting the main event at the local high school.
Yeah, that's one of their FFC, they're called, I guess.
Yeah. They
have these regional cards. Nasser Davis is Owen's opponent tonight, by the way. He's a 1-0. I don't know anything about him. Let's see how it goes. Let's see who. Yeah. So that's the card. Joel Harrow is the main event, and he's had some success. I think he's 5-2, and I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go look and see who's fighting again. But he's a main bout. He's a guy who's been around and had some success too in MMA.
So one of the reasons why I love Doug Gibson is because, for many reasons, but one of the reasons is he knows so much. He's an encyclopedia of information on Utah fighting, whether it be MMA or boxing. I'm able to, if I don't know of a fighter, I can message him, and a lot of times he knows their background.
This is a good fight. He's fighting Justin Horsley, who's another good fighter, local fighter. Harrow is 5-2. It's 140 pounds, and Horsley is 3-1. And the funny thing is, we're talking about it right now, and I don't know when it's going to get published. The fight's tonight, so we'll have to comment on it probably, on what happened later in the future.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I always say the date that it's being recorded on, is that way, if something happens that's huge tonight in the UFC world and fierce fighting that everyone's talking about, and this gets published next week, people aren't asking, well, why didn't they talk anything about that? It's because it was recorded at a different time.
Definitely.
So, Doug, I want to ask you. You've been covering Utah boxing and MMA for a long time. What's your opinion on the state of boxing and MMA in Utah right now?
I think MMA is always pretty strong. They're getting better matches. I remember 10, 12 years ago, you'd go to a card, and particularly among the amateurs, you'd have 7 first-round stoppages in MMA. They're more competitive now. FFC, along with Mountain, I can't remember what they're called, Mountain something. And of course, Stillfish has been around forever. They're like a rock here. So they have some good promotions. Also, some of these are trying to dip their toes into kickboxing. They've had kickboxing cards, and they were trying to have kickboxing cards by themselves. A lot of times they're just mixing them now, right? Having some kickboxing matches. In boxing in Utah is always ready for improvement. Okay, I haven't seen many flash cards lately, so I'm glad that they have Allhart picking up the slack. If they have 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in Utah this year, which I think they're planning to do, right?
Right.
That's equivalent to what Flash was doing. And the one thing about I don't know what Flash is called right now, so I apologize. I'm just using his name. They would sometimes have trouble matching opponents at the last minute. I remember Jesse West being so frustrated one time. We were over at that bar by the mall that has like Build-A-Bear and stuff like that. And he's sitting there frustrated because his opponent fell out at midnight. All right, and so that tended to happen. You know that. You tried to put matches with Tracy. And so they did have a card about fall through last week, which was unfortunate. I mean, last month, was it? When was the last card?
It was in June.
June, yeah. But hopefully that's not their fault. He didn't get on the plane. But hopefully there won't be more of that happening. Because I was really interested in seeing that heavyweight. Bishop Laley's his name or something? Who's supposed to be on the card the 26th.
Right.
Which I know you're going to be announcing there. I will be there because I'm going to cover it on Utah Fight Game. I'm sure you'll cover it on the Fight Talk and also your the Fight Chatter.
Right.
Yeah. Are there any prospects you're asking me too? I don't know if there's any.
Well, no, not about prospect. Just kind of where it is, and you're right. The fights always drop out. With Flash, it was hard because Flash didn't like to necessarily spend money. I remember one time Dominic Gwynn, who was a very good heavyweight.
He was.
In the early 2000s. Very good heavyweight, defeated Michael Grant and whatnot. Flash called me asking me if I could find him an opponent. And I asked, well, how much are you paying? And he said, well, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500. Now, you got to remember, this is a guy who fought on HBO, and he also fought James Toney. By the way, if you look up James Toney versus Dominic Gwynn and you watch the Showtime broadcast, you'll see my name because I was a guest judge on that for that card. But he wanted to offer $1,000, and then and this is probably 10 days out. Then when we were a week out, he brought it up to $1,500. Then when we were a few days out, he brought it up to $2,000, and I was able to get a guy who I believe was like 4-17 to come out to fight him. Good old Donnie Davis. Donnie Davis was a guy who he was also a fight booker. So he was also I was talking to him, seeing if he could find somebody. And then finally, when it came up to 2,000, he said, "Well, I'll do it." So he came out. That was Davis's last fight. Anyways, that was a rabbit hole.
Well, it is fun because I don't know the details like you do, but when they were trying to promote Jesse West, against opponents, and Billy Zumbrun too.
Right.
I wonder how much money, like you may know Henry Nauman one better than I do. I wonder how much money it took to get him to come to Utah.
Okay, so Henry Namu got paid $2,500.
Okay.
And Billy took that fight for, I believe, $600. It might have been $800. I can't remember if it was 6 or 8. Billy was great for local promoters because he knew the game enough to say, hey, you know what? I'll fight for just a little bit and I'll sell you $5,000 in tickets.
Yeah.
Just bring somebody in for me to fight that I could get a win, and then I'm going to go on the road for my next 2 fights, and I'm going to make that up. And
Because he
then
went
some.
to Europe, and fought some guy for 12 rounds. His last fight was against another Brazil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he went and fought the White Tyson in Germany, didn't he?
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I don't know if Utah has a heavyweight right now. I mean, who's that kid? He's pretty active on social media, and I can't remember his name, but Terrell Jamal Woods flattened him, unfortunately, one time in Salt Lake. But he's won a lot of cards, and he's gone all over the world, fighting and losing decisions now.
Right.
But he's not really you need somebody to come up that's gonna be something. When I was younger, Utah had a fighter named Jeff Shellberg. You look him up sometime. He fought the best guys. He was in the 70s and 80s, and then also they had Bronco Billy Wright.
Right.
Who was more, Bronco Billy Wright, because
right.
Fred's fought. He was more of a showman. I saw him in Salt Lake fight. It was in the early 90s. But you need a heavyweight. I don't know if Bishop Laley is one, but you need someone with the talent to beat anybody that comes here, and then who knows, they might have a shot.
And and that's kind of the downfall of like an Aaron Garcia. Aaron Garcia is a fantastic boxer, but he's also a lighter in the lighter weight divisions. The nice thing is what Aaron's doing is he's coming up and he's not fighting. He's going down to Mexico and fighting fights, but he's not fighting the worst of the worst to build his record. He's fighting good fighters down there. And the nice thing about being in a lighter weight class is if you get to 12-0 in a lighter weight class, you could definitely get a world title fight. Whereas with heavyweights, if you get to 40-0, you might still be in a waiting pattern for 5 years to actually get that title fight. I mean, Usyk was the number 1 contender for like 2 or 3 years before he actually got his shot at Anthony Joshua. Yeah. Anyways, we kind of went down.
I want to say one thing about Aaron Garcia Jr. is I think they're looking for wins, of course, but also for a little bit better opposition. Because he could fight in Utah. I don't know how much. I have no idea how much money he's getting. I'm not going to speculate, all right? But a lot of times in Utah, they win 6, 7 fights in a row, but then they're thrown out to somebody else, And I don't know I don't know enough about it, but I think they're trying to maybe make him a contender in Mexico or something, where he can come into the United States, perhaps already a main bout fighter. I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of what the point of going down south is. You could actually to Mexico. You could get more fights in a shorter amount of time. You don't have to worry about being suspended as much and whatnot. So there are advantages of going down there. You could kind of cherry pick opponents a little bit more than here in Utah. What I really like about what the DeCarlos are doing is it's giving a venue for
the magic locals, right?
Yeah,
that's good.
For a lot of these fighters to, one, show that they're the better fighter out of Utah, develop their skills, but also develop their record. Like Isaiah. Isaiah was about to take that fight in New York, and had he not had difficulties with his medicals, he would have taken that fight. The guy who actually took that fight got knocked out in the 2nd round.
I think Isaiah would have beaten that guy, frankly, but I don't think Isaiah would have beaten the guy who was going to fight, probably, unfortunately.
Right, right. The nice thing is Isaiah's now going to fight on this card, and he's going to fight on the next All Heart card. He has a chance to go 3-0 this year. His record would be much better, and instead of, so then when he goes on the road, he'll make a lot more money, which is definitely, I mean, when you think about it, that's what you do as a fighter, whether it's MMA or boxing. You're trying to build yourself up and make some money.
There are a couple of good guys on the card. Isaac Velasco is really good.
Yes.
He looked great in June, and he's fighting on this card at 26, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, Julian is a MMA. Julian Ruiz is both MMA and boxing, so he's not on this card.
I don't know. He's not on this
He
card.
was good last month too.
He was good last month. I kind of wonder about the guy he fought. Not taking anything away from Julian.
Like I may have been overmatched.
I think he was overmatched. But you know, when you're dealing with the guy making his pro debut, you got the, you know, like when we were talking on your podcast, and Dave was telling the Tina Hero story. By the way, if you haven't watched that, check it out. You know, sometimes these guys they get a false sense because they go into a gym, and you could go into your local gym that maybe has a few amateurs, doesn't have anyone really good, and you could beat up everyone. You could be the best fighter in your gym. That doesn't mean you're a top amateur or ready for the pros. And then you go in and you fight someone who's a killer like Julian, and it's night and day.
You ever see, I'm going back in time now, if you go to Facebook, not Facebook, if you go to YouTube, you can see the worst boxer of all time. Now, he probably isn't, okay? But I watched the fight live on Tuesday night.
By the way, I'm the worst boxer
No,
of all
you're
time.
not. No, you're not. But this guy comes in, and I remember watching this live. I used to love the Tuesday night fights. I wish they still had that.
Yeah.
But there was this young prospect making his pro debut. He was obviously a good amateur. And this guy comes in who's 1-0, and he's going like this. He looks like John L. Sullivan, all right? And he's throwing punches like this, okay? And the bout lasted about a minute and a half. The boxer was fighting looked bemused in the beginning, and then suddenly threw punches. It was over. So Teddy Atlas always says that you can build a record in the Deep South. But I've never seen someone that bad fight in Utah, at least, all right?
Until you saw Charles Press now. Anyways. There's actually a backstory. That guy actually was fighting in a warehouse for another guy who went on the road for...
John Tate or something?
I can't remember who it was. It was a guy who had another journeyman type record, would go on the road, but he would hold these fights
see, you know
in
the
a warehouse.
inside, you know how these things happen.
You see, I actually researched it, and I read an article on it, and the guy just fought in these fights that were in the warehouse, and he fought like 4 or 5 of them.
But he was 1-0 announced.
Yeah, and they came and they asked him, "Hey, do you want to go take this fight on TV? You're gonna make $1,500 or whatever." And so he decided to take it, and he went in there, gets beat, and then he said he never actually got his purse because the promoter gave the purse to the other fighter that brought him, and he never gave him the money.
That's like the setup. I mean, the thing is that I remember that guy saying, in the pre-interview, they said that he's never lost a street fight. Well, he lost a fight in the ring. But you know, I have dreams sometimes, and I never fought other than what do you call it? What do you call it when it's not really official? Smoker. Smoker fights. But I sometimes have dreams where I'm scheduled to fight like a top contender. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? And fortunately I wake up. I don't have to fight the guy. I'm thinking that poor guy, he couldn't wake up. All right.
So let me ask you, you've been basically the guy here in Utah because you've been associated with, you worked for Standard Examiner forever, and you have your blogs and everything, and you gave coverage for boxing and MMA, more coverage than a lot of other local
for the
papers.
For the newspapers, it's like an event. We'll do it once a year or something. All right. I love boxing. I learned to love MMA. Sort of what you were saying in your podcast. I love boxing. I like MMA. All right. And it bothered me that you had all these cards going on. You had boxing cards. You had fighters working their butts out in the gym. You had a heck of a lot of amateur cards out there. You had MMA going on, and nobody was covering it. Nobody still covers it. But you know, so at the Standard, I had the power to cover local cards. I had the power to go and do articles on what's Eric's last name? I can't remember. He was in his 40s, an MMA fighter. And he's going to hate me for not remembering his name. But I had the power to go do articles on Valentina Haro, Tina Haro, or Gary Cobia, mention you. And I had an article. I had the power to write these stories, because basically at the Standard, I've been there long enough to where I could do. And they're going to say no, but it's the truth. I could do, I mean, so within reason, whatever I wanted. I remember one time our publisher, we put a promo of the fight on the front page, and he goes, "Why is this on the front page?" But it got on the front page, all right. And then we had this thing called Currents, which we don't have anymore, and I was able to do an online only coverage of lots of stuff on Currents too. But it was just because I loved the sport and I was able to do it. Unfortunately, there used to be Chris Miller used to be the sports editor, and he liked boxing too, so he loved me doing these things. He told me he was a reporter. The Standard had a sports editor who said, "Chris, I just don't like boxing, so I'm not going to cover it." You know? Yeah.
So if you ever want to see how respected Doug is in the fight community, go to a fight with him, because Doug and I, we go to a lot of fights together, a lot of the local ones, and if you walk through, fighters, trainers, promoters all come up and shake his hand and ask him how he's doing. He posted a blog of the Fierce FC card that we went to last year, and we purchased our tickets. We didn't ask for
the guy told me we
press.
could have press.
Yeah, and he posted that blog, and the promoter.
I would love
comments,
to cover MMA more. I would love to cover boxing more, and I'm going to try to, but it's hard. It's hard to get around, so I just try to. I'm glad you're doing it too now, because I'm covering all hard. And if I hear of something, I try to put it in there.
Right.
But it's hard to get around. I'm not at the age where I can just get in the car and drive 60 miles and go, "Oh, it's wonderful."
Right.
But I made people angry sometimes, because sometimes if I try to not make it look like a fighter got overwhelmed, or something. And I remember one time, this is legit, the guy hurt his left arm, and the fight was stopped. Now the guy lost the first round badly, but the winner got very upset that I mentioned that part of the reason the fight was stopped because his left arm was hurt.
Right. Well, you're not going to please everybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
one more thing. This is funny. Cisco, I did a feature on Cisco. Okay, this is years ago. He was having a pretty good run in MMA, and I called him the Fighting Barber. I found out later he didn't like that. He is the Cisco Kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we were supposed to be with Cisco in his barbershop today. However, he had something come up, and we switched it up last minute, but it's kind of how you have to do. It's kind of how you have to do in the fight game. You always have to switch things up. Let's talk about All Hearts card here coming up next month on the 26th. Sean Cross versus Daniel Castro. What can you tell us about Daniel Castro?
I don't remember much about him. In fact, when I first saw that card, I thought, is Sean fighting off more than he can chew? Because the guy has a good record on paper, but he hasn't fought since 2018.
Right.
So that could be a problem for the guy.
Right. His brother John Castro is making his pro debut against Jacob Diaz. Jacob's had a kind of a rough run in the last couple of months.
John, I think, has had a decent amateur career. It's like it would be better for him if he has a kind of fight that Jesus Saldana did, even though Jesus Saldana took the loss. Jesus Saldana lost to the guy that Isaiah beat. I can't remember his name right now.
Mauro Gutierrez.
Yeah, but Mauro is a good, solid club fighter, and that's better than blowing some guy away in a minute and a half.
Do you think Jacob is better than his record suggests? I mean, he did have he has fought a couple of times, got outboxed against Eligio Hernandez, and then just got overwhelmed against Bobby DeBille. Do you think he might be a good, solid challenge?
It might be. I mean, DeBille could be. DeBille's in that kind of situation where you don't know if he's a great prospect or he's just having easy wins right now. He looks great, so I'm not dissing him at all. He could be the real deal, but you don't know yet. So it's hard for me to say how Jacob Diaz is because I don't know how good DeBille is yet. Yeah,
Right.
I know Diaz did go the distance so at one time, right? So
Yeah, against Eligio Hernandez
yeah,
on Rival Series 1.
yeah. So it's really hard when these guys are starting out because you don't know really. There used to be I'm going to bore people with this kind of stuff. But no, I mean, I'm just going to say that you don't know until they have to meet someone.
Right.
Today in London, Moses Ayutome or something is fighting Dylan White.
Right.
And everybody's calling Moses the next great fighter. Well, they said that about Dubois, they said that about Joyce, they said that about Anthony. But White is 31-3 with 2 title losses and 1 upset he avenged. So my point is, you might see Moses being exposed today, or he might prove to be the great fighter. And that's what you don't know about these young prospects, all right?
Right.
There's going to come a time when they're going to have to cross a bridge in their career. And Jose Haro did it, okay? But most of them, and I'm not saying this in any disrespect because it takes tremendous courage to get in the ring, most of them don't cross that bridge. Now within Utah, they can win a lot of fights regional,
Right.
but there comes a time, and so I'm just going in this wild, boring way to try to explain to you that I don't know how Jacob Diaz is going to do,
Right.
okay? Because I don't know how his other opponents are really going to do in the future.
I do appreciate the fact that Jacob Diaz has gone 0-2 in the Rival Series, and
Yeah.
now he's 0-4, and a lot of promoters would say, okay, let's not use this guy anymore. Let's not give him another chance. And here,
No, if he fights hard and tries.
yeah,
Remember that kid from Texas in the first rival card?
right,
Who whipped the guy? He
Yeah.
didn't have a great record, did he?
no, I think that was his first round when he was 0-3, and that's the
Yeah.
great thing about something
Yeah.
like Allhart in the Rival Series is it's bringing these guys. I mean, obviously Jacob Diaz is doing well enough for Jason and Monica to say, you know what, we're going to give him another shot. We're going to let him come in here and reward him with another fight, because there's so many times where a promoter will go up to the commissioner and say, hey, this guy's 0-3, 0-4. He just lost again. I mean, he kind of got blown out by Bobby DeBille. So you could just say, you know, a promoter could go up to and say, hey, you should probably suspend this guy indefinitely.
If he gets blown out at 26, he needs a rest.
Right.
But he has
And
shown himself.
boxing's not forgiving. Boxing's not like MMA that's as forgiving, where they'll be like, okay, you're 0-5 now. You know, you might be relegated to the high school card for Fierce FC, where you could start building yourself back up. Boxing would just kind of, okay, well, next time we need somebody for a win, we're going to give you a call.
Yeah,
So.
going to Sean Cross, his first fight, he just jabbed his way to win, right? He started to throw some right hands late in the fight because he got more confident.
Right.
But the guy he fought did not really have huge boxing skills. He was a wild puncher.
Right.
So I'm interested in seeing how Sean's going to do against somebody who might know the fisticuffs a little bit more sophisticated.
Right.
Yeah.
So the guy he fought told Sean that he had like 40 fights.
Well,
They were just in Montana they have semi-pro fights
Yeah.
at the going back to the smokers and the warehouse type fights and whatnot. So the interesting fight on the card, the most interesting fight on the card for me is Bobby DeBille versus Elio Hernandez.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one? You've watched Elio as an amateur and as a pro.
It's going to be a good fight. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I guess DeBille will be the favorite, all right.
Right.
But anything could happen in the fight. I do like the local matches. It's really strong to do that. Once again, I'm going to bore you with a long anecdote. Well, when I went to see the Olympic Auditorium in 1978, they had an amateur fight between Tony Baltazar and Johnny Montes, who had brothers who were contenders, and both Tony and Johnny became contenders too, world contenders. And they had a fight, and that's the fight everyone went to see, even though it was the amateur fight. Baltazar starched Montes in the first round, but they both went on to great careers. So I'm glad that they're having these local cards, where locals are fighting each other. And if you have a good fight, I don't know how it hurts you.
Right. And I had mentioned on my podcast a couple podcasts ago. I think that was the least viewed one, about Simon Rubalcaba. He was fighting Roman Polak, I believe. It might have been another guy that he was fighting. He's fighting up in Tahoe, and the main event was it was a heavyweight explosion card, which Gotham Boxing used to promote, and they were these cheap pay-per-views you can get for like
I remember
15, 12 or $15. The main event kept shifting because people were getting injured or falling off. But that card with Simon was the last fight on the card. It wasn't on pay-per-view, but everyone stayed because to them, those were the two locals. That was the main event. And Simon said that was the best night of his professional life because he won the fight. But the bad part is that was when he tore his rotator cuff or whatnot, and he started falling off after that. Anyways, couple of side notes. That's one thing. If you sit next to Doug and I at a fight, you're going to hear a lot of stories, and it goes sideways. You'll learn that as we do more podcasts together. We go sideways sometimes.
Do they have an opponent for the heavyweight yet?
I believe he's fighting the same. I can't remember his name, but he's fighting the same.
Is he going to make the flight this time?
Well, he's out of Salt Lake. It's the same guy he made his pro debut against.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
He's local as well. So we don't have to worry about whether or not the guy's going to actually show up.
Is Mary Gwen going to fight, or is that just a hope?
I think they got to find an opponent. That's the hard thing about women is sometimes it's hard to find opponents. I mean, that's why as a woman fighter, you could be 4-0 and a world champion because.
Well, I've watched her fight contenders on ESPN cards, and the same person she fought twice and she lost, but they were both tough fights.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to her being on the fight card. Steve Bowe has a good fighter. Elijah, I can't remember his last name.
You said there's a fighter from Nevada fighting on the card, right?
Yeah.
What's his name again?
Who?
Is there a Nevada fighter fighting on this card?
Yes. That is Christian Olivares, and he's fighting on the card. That's what I believe is the main event because it's the only 6-round fight on the card against Dylan Alvarado, and Dylan actually had with Castle Nor one of the best fights that I've seen locally in a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
That was really interesting. Castle trying to be a Floyd Mayweather type. Looks like,
that was in March, right?
Yeah,
wasn't it?
That was
that was
on
a
the
decision
February
loss for him, right?
Right. I
mean,
he got knocked
wore
down.
him down, didn't he?
Yeah, he got knocked down, I believe, in the 3rd round or 4th round. But yeah, it was a good fight. It was definitely a fight.
I'm looking forward to seeing Dylan fight again.
Unfortunately for Dylan, he went on the road like 3 weeks later in Boise, dropped a split decision, and then he went on the road in California and lost a decision there. So he's looking to bounce back. But I mean, that's kind of what happens with these cards. That's like I mentioned, the nice thing about All Hard, you could come here, get your wins, look good, build up your record a little bit, and then go on the road and make some serious money. I mean, I don't know. I don't ask to see the books with a promoter that I don't work for in that capacity. So I haven't asked how much are you paying fighters or anything like that, because quite frankly, I don't think that's my business.
It's not our business.
But I would imagine that some of these fighters aren't fighting for the amounts that they would be fighting for in California, Nevada, Arizona, on the big cards, because I mean, it's a small promotion and they're not going to be paying $5,000 to $10,000 for a fight. They're going to, just realistically.
I don't know the details, but I wonder how much trouble sometimes there might be from commission to try to get these fights going and stuff like that. I don't know anything about this. I don't know.
We could discuss a little bit. Well, that's a good segue into the next part. Congress. I know I mentioned on the first podcast I wasn't going to talk about politics. Unfortunately, they're making us because they're trying to do this thing called the Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act. And I have taking the political opinions out of it because I have an opinion on why it's happening. but basically, well, I'll say it. Zuffa Box, Dana White's good friends with Donald Trump. I mean, obviously, they're talking about a UFC card over at the White House next year on the 4th of July. I'm not against that. I think that's pretty cool. Great spotlight for the sport. But because Zuffa, UFC is now owned by TKO, which is developing Zuffa Boxing, they want to have their own title. The original Ali Act took away that capacity for promoters to have their own championships. And there's good things and bad things about that. The good things are kind of fairy tale, I think. The bad things are the reality. So the bad thing is in order to get a world title fight, you have to sign with the major promoter. You can't. The good thing is that the Ali Act hypothetically made it so you didn't have to sign with the promoter to get the title fight, and that all sanctioning bodies had to be independent. They had to have independent rankings and whatnot. But you see how the UFC model goes. They have great fights. They always evenly match title fights.
Don't they have them as independent contractors?
Right.
The fighters?
They
That's
do.
one way for Dana White to probably make a lot of money. He claims, right, the fighters are making more money each year, but I remember several years ago reading it was pretty bad for them at the lower tier.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, lower tier MMA fight.
I meant lower tier UFC.
Yeah, lower tier UFC fighters still, I believe, make a minimum of like $5,000 to $10,000 for their show, and then they get a win. That's most of the time the win bonuses are twice of what their show is. So they have.
So you have 4 MMA fights with
Right.
UFC, and you get, even if you're making $15,000, that's still only $60,000 a year. That's hard.
Right, but I mean, if you fight Fierce FC, once again, I don't know their purses, but I mean, Fierce FC. I mean, that if you're fighting on a Fierce FC card and it's at the high school on Washington
I don't expect them to get a lot of money.
They would probably. I would assume maybe 5 and 5, 500 like, show, 500 win.
Yeah.
And let's say you do 5 of those fights, you maybe make $5,000 to $10,000 in a year.
You've got to be working, and it's like the show in baseball.
Right.
You make nothing in the minor leagues, but you make a lot in the majors.
Right. But I mean, if you've made the UFC, you probably have a manager or a team that's helped supporting you and taking some of your purses, taking a percentage of your purse. Maybe and I know in boxing, if you're on the bottom, and this is one of the things. One of the things on this act is they're developing purse minimums of $150 per round.
Are you in favor of this or against? I didn't know.
They're honestly, I would.
I don't know as much as you about it.
Honestly, I would be more in favor of it,
okay.
And here's why. Right now, if Monica and Jason wanted to say Bobby Tabile versus Elio Hernandez is for the Rival Series middleweight championship, right? They can't do that. They can't have a Rival Series champion per the regulations under the current Muhammad Ali Act from '99. They're not allowed to. This would change it so small regional promotions could actually have a title, and they don't have to pay the WBU, the IBO, IBU, whatnot, $3,000 to $5,000 to come in and call it a title fight.
Because these MMA cards, FFC, Steel Fist, they have their champions.
And you know what? Those belts, those titles, even if they don't get
to keep,
even if they don't get to keep the belt, let's say they get, they give them a trophy or something, it means a lot. I mean,
but I worry about the pay structure in the UFC because let's say you're fighting 5 times a year and you're getting $15,000 each fight, and you're having to share 30 to 40% of it. And if you're at the UFC, you want to make MMA your career. You don't want to be clocking in a job. And so I worry about these kids. I hope they get more money when they get to that level in the sport.
Especially with the new deal, that was another thing that I have listed to talk about is the $7.7 billion deal from CBS is and Paramount. To me, that's a game changer.
Yeah,
However,
he's telling ESPN you're not the big dog anymore.
Right. It's not just doing that, but it's also giving TKO a large amount of money to pay fighters. Now, TKO is private equity, and you can get into a large rabbit hole talking about private equity having to pay their investors and whatnot. The best investment would be to pay these fighters better, because then, I mean, realistically, why are the best heavyweights, the best potential heavyweight athletes in the NFL or the NBA rather than doing boxing? Because you could go do a 10-year NFL or NBA career, and even if you're on the journeyman level and you stay on the roster that long, you make like $60 or $70 million. If you're a journeyman heavyweight boxer or MMA, even if you're a UFC heavyweight champion, you're not touching that kind of money. But this deal with the UFC has a way to pay generational wealth to the fighters, where you could get somebody who might have been an Aaron Donald or Warren Sapp or whatnot. That would have been, that's a great football player, to say, no, I'm not going to do football, I'm going to do MMA now.
What is the amount of money for that deal again?
$7.7 billion.
Here's what I'd like to do someday, and this is a pipe dream, but I'd like them to take $500 million and set up a foundation for every MMA fighter, that they would put 10% of their paycheck in. It'd be like a college endowment where these guys would get health care. I know it's a pipe dream. I know people are going to say no, but I think that's what's desperately needed, particularly when you have neurological diseases.
Well, I wrote an article back in 2005, and I linked it on one of the podcasts, where I talked about how we need to come up with something for health insurance and a pension fund. I mean, if
pension fund would be a good idea too. You're right.
So something like the Screen Actors Guild could have a pension fund, even for extras, people who have who go on like 50 movies, but they're mostly an extra, or they have one or two lines. If those guys could get a pension, then why can't we have a fighter pension fund once you get to a certain level? I mean, obviously, if you're fighting on All Heart cards and flash cards and Let's Get It On cards and whatnot, you're not going to be making the kind of money where you're going to want to see 10% of your purse going into a pension fund. And the other thing is every time they've tried to do something like that, there would be nothing. I heard there was one that was trying to be developed in California. One fighter came up to and said, "Hey, you know what? I've put $10,000 into this pension fund over 3 years. Where's that money?" And they're like, "The pension fund declared bankruptcy."
Yes.
So they need to get. I would love to see that happen.
They need a big amount of money to start it, and they've been trying to do this for 70 years, and maybe it won't be successful. But it would be a nice idea, because a fighter has one career. A manager can have many careers. Promoters can have many careers. And so you can say this fighter only fought for 6 years, but took a lot out of him. I'd like to see him get a little bit back from that. But it just requires lots of money.
I think maybe I don't know what the solution would be that would work for everyone, right? Perhaps they could put it in one of these boxing revival bills or whatnot.
John McCain tried to do this.
Right.
It was not
that was part of that was supposed to be part of the original Muhammad Ali Act. This one, I'm in favor of it because, one, it develops minimum purses, so you don't have all these backroom deals. I mean, one quick story about the CCC promotions card. When I was writing out the contracts for that, there were guys that were coming in from out of town. A different promoter or a different manager was paying for it, and so it didn't take a hit against our purse liabilities. I would write as the fighter's purse $1, because I knew that they had some sort of backroom deal.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to. I had told Tracy, let's not take that money. If they can make whatever deals they want, right? But we're not going to take that money. They can pay themselves, which honestly, if I really think about it, is not even a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be allowed at all.
Yeah.
But part of one of the fighters there signed a contract for $1, went in the ring. He was the first fight out. Got beat so bad that Rich Montanez comes up to me and says, "Charles, do you guys have a mop or something? You can guys clean up the ring. It looks terrible. There's this poor guy's blood all over." And I spent the next 10 minutes on my hands and knees with the wet towel, cleaning up this guy's blood. He goes and gets his purse. He gets his $1. He comes up to me and says, "Where's the rest of my money?" And I said, "If you made a deal with the other guy's manager, promoter, or whatnot, that's not beside your contract, we're not involved with that." Now Tracy had gone to the hospital. He was having some health issues. He had gone to the hospital. I did not know that the other guy's trainer had given the $3,000 this kid was supposed to get to Tracy. And Tracy had given it to me, but he didn't tell me what it was for. He said, "Here's the money for the purses." And it was probably about $10,000 in cash that I was holding right there. And and Richard Montanez, first thing he says to me, Rich comes up to me and says, "Hey, Charles, you have $18,000 in purse liabilities. Tracy's on a cash only basis, so we're going to need that cash before we approve this card."
Wow.
So I gave him that $10,000. I think we made another $3,000 in ticket sales that night. I pitched in another $800 out of my own money, and the card went through, and they pulled the bond and everything. I think I've told that story before. But the point is if you have purse minimums, and instead of writing $1, I have to write 600. And let's say the fighter has a backroom deal with the other guy still, the other manager still. At least he's getting $600 for getting beat up, and not $1.
It'd be nice if the other managers would just give the money to the promoters.
Well, but then you might have a situation like what happened with Tracy, where he goes to the hospital, hands all the money to someone like me who's second in charge that doesn't know, "Hey, hold 3,000 of this for this kid who's because he has a backroom deal."
It's really sort of you have, because in that card you had a bunch of Eastern European fighters, right?
Right.
Who were brought in from California to fight, right, to get some wins.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of those fighters fought for $1, according to our.
Well, one of them fought a memorable fight against Bud Spencer.
Yeah.
Not Bud Spencer, Bud Crawford.
Bud Crawford, yeah.
Bud Crawford several years later. Speaking of that, who do you think's going to win, Canelo or Crawford?
I think that Crawford will. Crawford's a lot like Roy Jones. He makes calculated decisions. Roy Jones always wanted to move up to heavyweight, but when it came time to fight against Michael Moore, Evander Holyfield, Chris Bird, three very good, or even James Toney as a cruiserweight, the four very good fighters, he wouldn't fight them at heavyweight. He fought John Ruiz, and because he knew he was the better boxer. So I think that Roy had done tests to see how he would do at those weights, and he wanted to move up to heavyweight, but he wanted to wait until he fought the right heavyweight. Yeah. So Bud, no doubt, has gone and sparred with, and hard sparred, borderline fought against good light heavyweights to know he could take Canelo's punches, to know if he's going to maintain his speed and a decent amount of power to keep Canelo respectable. The other thing about Canelo is, you got to remember, he started at 154.
He did. You're right.
So he's and moved up. So Bud, he started at 140 and he's moving up. But I think Bud's the better boxer. I think he's an outboxing.
Well, I'm going to say Bud's going to win a narrow decision, but you have to understand something. I'm usually wrong. Okay.
And we both could be wrong. Canelo's made me wrong several times. So,
but I would, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I'd probably put some money down on Crawford.
Right. I in a sense hope this this passes, because I mean, you look at MMA, they have a really strong main promotion, UFC, right? And then they've got all these small promotions, and the small promotions still make money. They pay their fighters well, and and I think it'll change the dynamic. Dana White has said several times that part of the problem with boxing is a guy could look really good 3 or 4 times out, but lose those 3 or 4 times, and then the people doing the rankings and whatnot just forget about him, or he's just brought in as an opponent. Whereas Zuffa boxing might be a lot different. Now, my only problem with Zuffa boxing is the same problem I have with the UFC, and it goes back to what we were talking about, is pay. If you look at the top 5 payouts for UFC fights, the number 1 is Brock Lesnar at $8 million, and then if you go down the line, it's around 5 to 4.5 million. You compare that to the type of money Tyson Fury made to fight Yusuf, the amount Yusuf made, the amount Bud Crawford and Canelo. I mean, look at how much money Canelo Alvarez has made in his career. I mean, if you look at it, you know, the original deal with DAZN and whatnot, he's probably made close to $750 million.
That's amazing.
So the question is if that would keep up, because if you do TKO's business model where you're buying a UFC, there's a UFC pay-per-view tonight. I couldn't tell you who was on the card, and a lot of people can't tell you who's on the card, but because they're UFC fans, they'll buy it.
Tyson Fury.
Right.
UFC is UFC. Boxing does not have, Zuffa, whatever you're calling it, is not the same iconic entity that UFC is.
Right.
So Tyson Fury or Usyk of what they're selling, so they're getting all the money. These guys for UFC are fighting for UFC.
Right.
So they're not getting as much money. I think one thing Zuffa's going to do is demand fighters fight. Okay? I mean, I love the sweet science, don't get me wrong, but it's a business. And,
right.
And these fighters can't tap dance for 12 rounds, even though you can admire it as a purist.
Right.
They're gonna. That's what you think of UFC. It's almost like a cage. It's like there are times where a guy will get in the ground and bore the hell out of people.
Right.
But most of the time, it's pretty competitive.
But the point is Zuffa boxing I believe is what they want to call it.
Yeah.
They want to make it so they would make it the same model as everything else in the TKO brand. You don't go watch a certain bull rider, you watch the PBR. You don't go watch a certain slap fighter, you watch slap fight.
So you want watch the name UFC to be the iconic.
Right, right. And that's kind of what Don King tried to do in the 80s. And what the PBC tried to do recently is they tried to make the promoter over the fighters. Unfortunately, fortunately in boxing, the fighters always rise above the promotion's name, and that's where the money is for the fighters. You're paying for Tyson Fury, you're paying for Canelo Alvarez, you're paying for Bud Crawford, you paid for Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather. I mean, that's why he's Money Mayweather, as everybody knew who Floyd Mayweather was, who Manny Pacquiao was.
I'm being a nerd, I know, but you say to yourself, hey, I'm going to watch UFC tonight. You don't say, I'm going to watch Zuffa tonight.
Right.
You know, that's the difference right there.
But I don't necessarily, that's what I've read. They want to call it a Zuffa boxing. I don't necessarily like that name. I would rather, I would just rather they use the parent company's name, TKO. I'm going to watch TKO boxing. That sounds cool. That sounds a lot cooler than Zuffa boxing. That sounds like somebody's going to get knocked out. You know, Rival Series is a better name than Zuffa boxing. I'm going to go watch the Rival Series card tonight.
The Rival Series is a pretty cool name. I didn't quite know the difference between Rival Series and All Hard at first, but now I get it. Okay.
It's just the series
Yeah,
name.
the series is the boxing cards.
But it's building two brands.
But we're talking about Don King. I kind of feel sorry for the guy now. I mean, he's trying to resurrect Adrian Broner.
Well,
Broner needs the money, and he can't. Michael Hunter is like his big card. He's suing TKO because they're trying to draw Michael Hunter away to somebody else.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much money did he give Michael Hunter over the years?
Probably not a lot.
Well, there are fighters that signed with Don King over the last 15 years that say they make more money sitting at home just collecting checks from Don than going out and fighting on the road.
Kind of sad,
I mean, whether it's like $3,000 or $4,000 a month to sit at home and be in the gym and train and everything. I mean, that sounds a whole lot better than going and working at a warehouse or something.
Not knocking Don King. This is not a knock on Don King. I'm just saying that a lot of fighters in the 80s, heavyweights, careers did not flourish with Don King.
Well, that's kind of the fear, and why the original Muhammad Ali Act came about is because to get a shot at the heavyweight title, if you wanted a shot at Tim Witherspoon or Michael Hunter or Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes, you had to sign with Don King. And not only did you have to sign with them for that fight, you had to sign with them for your next 5 fights.
We're talking over an hour,
And that's and that's kind of that's kind of the downside of having to sign with TKO to fight for the TKO championship. Now, don't get me wrong, the Big Four aren't going away. This bill doesn't kill the Big Four. So you'll still have Eddie Hearn, you'll still have Oscar De La Hoya, you'll still have Queensberry out there.
Here's the one thing, I'm going to sign up for Paramount Plus now, because these fights I will never pay for on pay-per-view, I'll be able to watch for $10, $15 a month now.
Right.
Also,
that was a very good move by CBS, and not to get political, but that might be why they got rid of Stephen Colbert.
Well, you're maybe.
Yeah. Anyways,
well, let's bring back Max Kellerman. I still hear him occasionally. The thing is that first I want to say about the '80s. I loved watching boxing in the '80s. Don't get me wrong, but I saw things happen. You know, I saw fighters eat themselves out of contention. I saw Joey Curtis, who I'm not making any accusations, although I have my suspicions, stop a fight 63 seconds into the fight between Dokes and Weaver. I was a huge Weaver fan, so we can talk about that some other day. He was robbed. But anyways, I just want to see entertaining fights on TV again. And I think one reason we don't see them on ESPN, we don't see them on Fox anymore, is because they got too pedestrian in the fights.
Right.
And the fighters didn't have the excitement that you need to attract people, because people aren't purists that UFC gives you.
And that's kind of why HBO got out of the game, Showtime got out of the game.
And so we've lost boxing.
ESPN. I think ESPN dropped its top rank deal. I mean, ESPN just signed a deal with TKO for the WWE rights. So I mean,
sorry.
Anyway, along with Netflix signed for the WWE rights. So I mean, that's one of the things Dana said is, Dana said when they announced him and the Saudis were working together, who's got the best chance at getting boxing, multiple TV deals?
Money.
And there's going to be a lot of money put into this.
I can't afford DAZN, people. I'm sorry.
DAZN was great when it started out because they weren't going to do pay-per-views. Then all of a sudden they did pay-per-views.
I'm hoping that they put the prelims on YouTube at least.
Yeah, they were saying. Now Dana White has backtracked a little. He said there might be a once a year or twice a year pay-per-view still, but I mean the nice thing is the big cards are all going to be.
I worry if he starts putting 1 or 2 on a year, they're going to get more. So I was hoping that was gone.
Well, he, but I don't. I think he put that out as, hey, don't be surprised if we do have an occasional one.
The White House would be a pay-per-view.
Right. Something like that would be a pay.
What we have to do, we have to have. No, I'm not going to say it because it's too silly. But yeah, I'm glad that UFC presumably is going to be mostly subscription now, so you can watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we merged the two topics there of the UFC deal and the boxing deal. I'd like to say thanks, Doug. We can't for hosting us here in your house. Thanks for being on the podcast and pivoting last minute to do this. This was great. I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast. It's a little bit different.
It's a lot of fun.
I came out of the basement. But thank you, Doug, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks. That's a wrap.